Teenage boys are growing up in a world where manhood is being put under the microscope and redefined in real time. The mixed messages are everywhere. Be strong but vulnerable. Speak up but don't say the wrong thing. Just be yourself, but only if you fit the mould. And while adult voices dominate the conversation on how young men should behave, very few are actually asking boys what they think and feel. 18-year-old Jesse has been doing just that as a member of White Ribbon Australia's Youth Advisory Group. He spent the past few years helping shape how issues like respect, masculinity and consent are spoken about with young people. We explore the quiet conflict young men face, the pressure to live up to an image that's not who you are, and the mass appeal of the alpha male narrative, whether we like it or not. From everything labelled toxic to missing the point entirely, from peer dynamics to the search for meaning, this is a perspective on what it's actually like to grow up as a teenage boy today and what to do when the world's telling you who to be. This is Jesse Rothgrew. Welcome to Young Blood, the volunteer video podcast dedicated to young men's mental health. I'm your host, Cal McPherson, and this is a platform for young men and their loved ones to share lived experience stories and show that no matter what you're going through, you're not alone. Suicide is the #1 killer of young people, and changing that starts with speaking up. So let's do it. This episode is proudly brought to you by Credit Union SA and Bernie Lewis Home Loans, two South Australian businesses that believe in the value of raising mental health awareness, working together to help save lives. Improving the mental health of our communities is a complex challenge that calls for speaking up and taking action, and sharing lived experience stories is a major part of making positive change. We couldn't bring you these podcasts without their support. This show touches on some tough topics that may provoke strong emotions. If you find anything in this chat distressing, please do whatever you need to do to look after yourself. Jesse, you've been part of White Ribbon's Youth Advisory Group for a few years. What got you into that?
Yeah, it was a combination of a few things, really. I got recommended it by a teacher at school, and what really drew me towards it was that they were asking for a young person. It was targeted towards us. Often if you try and really join anything, try and have your voice heard when you're a younger person, you get a little bit discredited. You don't have as much life experience. But it was the fact that they were seeking out young people that really caught my eye, got my attention. And then, I've been lucky. I've not really had any personal struggles with domestic violence, thankfully. But I guess, obviously I know it's an issue, and I've heard and experienced through my mum and sister personal issues of not domestic violence, but disrespect towards women, be it catcalling or however, and that really quite annoyed me. So I wanted a chance to have my voice heard and make an impact. So
what sort of things were you being asked your opinion on with other young people?
Yeah, it was about 15 of us to start with. It's dropped down a little bit now, but we sort of just kind of tailored their initiatives and like policies towards young people to make it more attractive and make more sense. Obviously, they're a professional organisation run by adults. They don't have that many kids working for them. So it was all about just trying to make sure the language resonates. Like they'd show us examples of conversations between what they would have as a conversation, and then they'd ask about wording. Is this things that kids actually say, especially in a school environment as well?
Yeah, trying to bridge that gap.
Yeah,
make it not so obvious that some adults wrote it and kids are looking at it just
they're like never heard this before.
Some guy with a backwards cap and trying to be cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
And what do you feel like you were able to give from that experience that the people running it actually got out of hearing kids' voices?
Well, it's definitely increased their sort of engagement with the youth. They've told us, they've also shown us a few times where it's really helped, but just looking back on their website, looking over the initiatives, seeing how things have been tailored, especially like images as well, anything that just relates to children. And it's just been nice to actually feel an impact and be able to see where we've specifically given them notes and they've actually worked on them and not just ignored the feedback.
Speaking of that messaging that young people see from what you consume online, how do you feel like that's shaped the way that you speak and act and carry yourself, and especially the young men around you as well? Yeah,
online anything obviously plays a significant role. I think for me it's definitely secondary to my personal influences of family, friends, but it still has a massive impact, and it just depends more specifically, I guess, on who you listen to. There's a number of people I like online who I sort of not necessarily look up to, but I value their opinion. And, you know, it doesn't mean that I agree with them on everything, but it means that I can look at their body of work, look at their opinions, and I just try and always think critically about it, and not just, you know, I'm not that person. I don't agree with everything they say.
Yeah, so you're not an acolyte of anyone who swears by everything that they say.
Yeah.
But that would be pretty common. That's you like someone online and we want to follow people that we agree with or we feel like carry our values or they're cool and we want to be like them. And then with the algorithm at play as well, we get more and more of that and you're less and less likely to look outside of that for other perspectives, and it takes a lot of maturity and awareness to actively look for other perspectives and opinions, especially when online content is so polarizing and so extreme, where sometimes the minority voices on either end, where the most extreme on the left or the right, for an example, are the loudest, and we see most of that content, but really 90% of people are somewhere in the middle, but that doesn't make for as clickable content online.
And look, I was one of those people when I was younger. Like I would just kind of take what someone says as a whole and I'd have to agree with them on everything. And then I started to think critically as I matured. I was like, maybe I don't agree with everything they say. And then I'd take specific points and sort of try and formulate in my head counter arguments. But obviously I think it's just a maturity thing. There are, you know, significant influences on the far left and far right, of course, especially on young boys. But you know, most people, especially as they get older, have the capability to think critically, and most people realize they don't agree with it. As you say, 90% of people sit in the middle, and that's because they really think and reflect. And yeah, I might agree with them on some things or whatever they say, but not on everything, and have the ability to really discern the wheat from the chaff.
How influential have you seen it be in general on people around you, or if you had to speak generally about teenage boys in particular, do you think it is as influential as it's said to be by people who aren't teenage boys, or do you think that the reality actually differs from the narrative in terms of how massive the impact is?
I don't think it's as big of an impact as people make it out to be. Just from my experience, the people who I know, the mates that I have, you know, like people talk about like Andrew Tate, for example, a lot on the news. No one really likes him that I know. Like people might agree with him on a few things, like the importance of going to the gym or how to run a business. But like no one really listens to him for his opinions on women. And to be honest, he's become a bit of a meme. People just sort of hear him and then, you know, have like they just know that he's sort of talking shit and that like no one really takes him seriously. And a lot of people in the media, I feel like they just kind of take him as a symbol of hatred of women or like far right or something. But he doesn't really have that much of an effect. And I'm talking about him specifically, but also just other people as well.
Because it's been, I mean, he's the...
He's like symbolized as it now.
He is, because I think it's just easy for people to invoke his name, and it's just... Most people in the world know him now, which he loves.
Oh, he's so famous.
Which he loves, which is kind of his whole point. And the more we talk about him, the more famous he gets, which he loves anyway. So it kind of defeats the purpose. But that's been extrapolated to other influencers who've borrowed a lot of those themes that have worked for him in terms of garnering an audience. And that's where all the fury is now around all these voices out there that are all... misogynistic supposedly, and you certainly see some of that content, but it feels like to me, and I'm not a teenage boy, but it feels like to me there's an attitude like that's all teenage boys are consuming and they're all totally sucked in by it and taking it at face value and are becoming acolytes of these men who just always have their shirt off for some reason, smoking a cigar, sitting on a
next to a pool,
$1 million car, talking about how women are property, and that is all the content that young guys are mostly consuming, and then they're trying to emulate that in their own lives.
Well, yeah, most people just don't fall for it. Like there's a pretty common theme as well, which is that they might talk about women just to get some clicks and attention, but then they draw all that right back and they want you to buy a course. Like they're trying to make money, they're trying to thrive off it, and most people see through it. You know, maybe for really young boys, like 14, that kind of thing. Like you see a Lamborghini, you're like, oh, that's pretty cool. But, you know, Andrew Tate is pretty much just a a 14-year-old's fantasy.
Yeah.
He's what, 35 or something? Like,
Yeah, I think he's older than that.
yeah, it's like, Jesus, time to grow up a little bit.
Yeah, well, hopefully.
Yeah.
And lots of people don't, their perspectives don't actually mature like that. You can definitely hit your adult years still chasing after those things and thinking that it's going to bring you fulfillment. And who knows, maybe for some people it does.
Yeah.
So how have your views and your priorities and your values matured, say, from the age of 14 to 18? Like, what's been instrumental in changing or sharpening up your worldview?
Yeah, I mean, when you're younger, for me especially, it's very easy to just, as you say, make an acolyte of someone and agree with everything they say, which makes it really easy to go far right or far left. But, you know, as I matured, I certainly just kept asking myself questions, and I wanted to have the correct opinion by the time I'd left the room. Like, whenever I'd talk with a mate, you know, even on politics or something, I came in knowing pretty much what I'm saying. There's definitely room for improvement. I'm definitely not 100% correct, but even if I am mostly correct, there's still areas that can be refined. So I just wanted to learn from other people, and you want to actively seek out opposing views, which is one of the things social media just doesn't give you at all, because it's all a rabbit hole. You like one video and then you get recommended with heaps of it because they just want your attention. They're trying to keep you interested. And then it is kind of easy to sort of get radicalized a little bit, but most people had the maturity to realize, and it's when they come back out of the social media bubble, maybe they speak with a friend or they speak with a parent, and they're like, well, yeah, my views don't really actually make that much sense. Let me check myself, search for some opposing views, and then, yeah, try and have the correct opinion by the time you leave the room.
So do you have healthy debates with your mates and your family?
Yeah, politics is a no-go in my family. They have that off the table. But, you know, we like having chats. It's fun. But with mates as well, especially, you know, a few of my friends are very politically engaged. They study law. They do that, all that sort of stuff. They love it. And it's interesting to talk to them, but it's more interesting because obviously we're already friends. Like, we can be very open, you know, we can, make sure that we're actually just seeking to try and find the truth, and that we're not actually just trying to see who's smartest, you know, who can win the debate. It's not a debate. You're trying to educate each other. You're trying to make sure that, you know, you have beliefs that actually work within society and that represent all people equally.
So say you've got a strong opinion on a topic and your mate totally disagrees with you and it's something that's important to you and you're talking about it. How do you respond?
Well, I mean, they're still your mate. Obviously, that doesn't change. It's just like, I think it just kind of depends on the topic, to be honest. Most of the time, like, even if you disagree with someone, you can sort of work out, like, you know, you don't actually disagree on the fundamental issues. Like, we all want the same future. There's
more you agree about than you might think.
And you just have different ways of getting there. So, like, for me, it's not a big issue. I'll happily be mates with someone who I fundamentally disagree with on any number of things, as long as we have the same vision. And I think that is what kind of unites people as friends, like you, and as, you know, like a country. Like, we all have the same vision for Australia. We want a prosperous nation, everyone to have equal access, opportunity, all the things. So as long as you agree with that, like, we just disagree on how to get there. And that's something I'm completely fine with.
Do you want to have the discussion with people that you disagree with?
Yeah. As I said, I want to leave the room with the correct answer. I don't think I'm going in with the right answer. I'm probably wrong, to be honest, and definitely have room for refinement on most things. But, you know, and like, for example, I like Joe Rogan. I like listening to his podcast. I listen to...
Oh, blasphemy.
Oh.
No, I'm kidding, man. I'm a big fan as well.
Yeah, but I like left wing and I like right wing stuff because I want to check myself. I want to make sure I have the full understanding. And also, when you see them as humans, like just talking for 2 hours, it like the media obviously vilifies people because it gets clicks and
it's easy. It's lazy.
It's so easy.
It's really lazy
Yeah.
to lump people in the same group who might be totally different. Like that typical group of Jordan Peterson, Joe Rogan, Andrew Tate, saying that all those guys are the same when they're completely different.
Yeah.
Not saying that they're saints or that we should listen to everything that they say or they don't say some stuff that's out of their lane that is perhaps harmful in some ways.
But even often they'd still correct themselves. And it's like, if you speak for hundreds of hours on video, you're going to say
you're going to
some
get
dumb
it wrong.
things.
Yeah, of course. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And the fact is people resonate with, well, Jordan Peterson and Joe Rogan as typical examples, because they are authentic and they're curious and they want to have the conversation with people. And there's going to be things that people really disagree with that they say. Yeah. Those characters are just people that we always bring up because they're the easiest examples to think of.
Like symbols of them. Yeah.
But there's many people that we could talk to about like this. But I think most people have a really strong negative opinion of someone who's very famous, mostly for their online content, aren't people who actually watch the long form content, right? They base an opinion off articles, clickbait articles that they see, or a couple of TikToks they watch, or their friendship circle. Or an edited clip that's taken out of context. Or maybe it's in context and maybe it's something that person said that actually you don't agree with, that is not cool, and that's fair enough. But just because you disagree with someone's view on something doesn't mean that they're an inherently evil or worthless person who's not worth having a discussion with. And that societally we've have a bit of that attitude, and the super polarization of everything, where it's very quick conversations, yes or no answers, black or white, you're either with us or you're against us. If you have a particular opinion about one subject and that's different to mine, then you're a bad person. I don't want to have the discussion with you. Rather than taking each issue separately based on its merit alone and talk about that and separate that from the actual person. Like,
I think that's exactly right. And like, as you say, it's so easy to vilify anyone. And look, some people are villains. Like, I'm sure if there's 100 people that the media talks about, a few of them will be bad people. But for me, it's just been about taking them as individuals and separating each idea. Like, if you have someone on Joe Rogan who I might disagree with, it's still nice to hear him talk. And often I've never left a podcast feeling worse about that person. It's always been, I get to see them as a human, understand their motivations. And pretty much all the time, I'm happy that, that's what I'm saying. We're all working towards the same vision. We just have different ways of getting there.
He tries to do that. Sometimes probably tries harder than others, but tries to have all sorts of different people on and bases it all on what he's interested in, who he wants to talk to. So you get a mix of opinion. And I think getting that variance of opinion and that variance of perspective and allowing people with different opinions to speak at length and explain themselves is fundamental to a healthy functioning society, and why those platforms are so popular, because it's so different to what's offered in mainstream media generally, where it's
opposite,
so loaded and there's very time limit based, and people don't get the space to talk with the brevity to really explain what they think. And we, on one hand, we're accused of having no attention span, and that's been proven and very true in some cases. We're constantly scrolling, flicking from one thing to the next. But on the other hand, podcasts that go for 3-4 hours are incredibly popular and have an audience of tens of millions. So there is a massive appetite out there for people to want to have these discussions, want to hear what people actually think, and to be able to believe it. Not think, oh, this person's got an earpiece in, they're being fed what the answers need to be, they're trying to say the right thing. You can't try to say the right thing for 3 hours. It's going to be really obvious that you're not being genuine.
And you probably just can't do it either. But as you say, it's the exact opposite, especially of social media, in terms of social media is short form content, which will take you down a rabbit hole. If you have a 3-hour podcast, you're not getting taken down a rabbit hole because you can have opposing views, listen to both, listen to a few different podcasts of people who disagree, or even on one where they have two people debating. Some things try and meet it in the middle, like Piers Morgan Uncensored. I just think it's really bad because you get a minute to talk.
The shouting match.
Yeah, exactly. It's so awful to watch, and it does nothing for me. All my friends, no one really likes it. For us, I can only speak for the people I know, but it doesn't interest any of us. We like long form podcasts where you get a chance to speak. You can have your voice heard. You're not going to be interrupted. You're not rushed, and you can actually get your view out there. It's the exact opposite of social media, where you just get fed down a rabbit hole. Because especially for young people, I feel older people as a whole should do a better job of being kind of stewards for them. When you're 14, it's very easy to maybe just go down a rabbit hole. Most people, as they get older, they'll check themselves, they'll realize they'll mature. Some people won't. I think it's over dramatized, the number who do, because I certainly don't know many, if any, who do.
What do you think the allure is for a kid, say at 14, of going down that rabbit hole, like the ads we see on TV now, that typical stereotype that we're thinking about when we're thinking about young men getting radicalized online? Like, what do you think is the pull there? Like, what are they getting from that online content that they're seeking?
Well, there's probably two things. It's firstly attention grabbing. Like you have a Lamborghini or something like that, of course it's going to bring in attention. But it also hits on the root issues with a lot of things. Like there are a lot of young men out there who feel misrepresented, who are very alone, who aren't happy with their life. You know, the leading cause of death for men under 50 is suicide. Like, of course, mental health is a massive issue for men. And so if you have someone, you know, not to say Andrew Tate again, like, but just like that kind of thing, where they're like, I have all the answers, I understand your pain, I'm here for you. Of course it's going to bring in some people because it's designed to. And, you know, end of the day, they don't care. They're trying to sell a course and most people can work that out. But yeah, like I feel like it's kind of overplayed. Most people do just work it out and realize, hey, they might correctly identify the problem, but they don't have the right solutions. And then it's up to the people to sort of work out what works for them. Like everyone has different perceptions of, you know, what a good person is, what they should strive towards, and good traits that you should have, especially as like a man or a woman. But I think most people have it in them and want to work out how to be a better person. And they'll eventually work out that all these flashy cars and everything doesn't actually mean anything, and it's all about who you are as a person and how you treat the people around you.
Well, it's encouraging. Some faster than others. Not the cars, the people figuring it out.
Yeah. Everyone matures at different rates.
That's right. How have adults communicated to you and your mates, I suppose, in the last 5 years around these kinds of topics, and when has that landed versus not landed?
You mean like at schools or like my parents?
Yeah, anything like that. Speakers, educational programs, like whenever these topics are being focused on, how's that been broached and how's that been received?
Well, I mean, that's always going to be less effective than family. Like speaking to my parents about it massively has a bigger impact than anyone at school. But there is a good way to do it at school. Most of the time we just get given like a PowerPoint presentation with a number of stats on it, or, you know, some speaker who clearly doesn't want to be there. They're just there for the money. And then like it just doesn't resonate. People don't listen. People literally just switch off the second they start talking. And so you need personal stories. You need gripping things. Like I can still remember it was for a RAA talk, road safety. It was in the chapel at school, and it was to all, I think we were year 11 at the time. And it was a guy who was telling us about his story and how his wife and 2 daughters had died in a car crash. And he took us through his day, you know, starting in the morning, where they were going. They were on like a holiday, going to some campsite. And he detailed through, and he was in tears pretty much most of the time. Fair enough, I would be as well. And, you know, how he slowly realized, like, no messages, no response, gets a call from police. Like, it was gripping. Everyone in the chapel was listening. And I talked to a few of my mates before I came on this to ask a few things, but I was asking them about that, and they all remembered the story, where I was like, can you remember any other school presentations? No one said anything. Like, it's about having a personal story, which is kind of difficult to do for a few topics, especially domestic violence. But, you know, maybe if you can have someone, I think the ideal scenario would be maybe a man who had, you know, committed some domestic violence in the past and had reformed and shared his story for how he did so. But obviously that's really difficult, and it's a new level of vulnerability that not a lot of people would be willing or comfortable to do. But having as many personal stories, getting it away from PowerPoint presentations, trying to engage people, and that's what will actually help, because the current way doesn't work at all. No one's listening.
Have you felt like yourself or young men around you have been positioned as the problem?
I don't think that's their intention, but it definitely does sometimes come off as that way. Like, even just by nature of having the conversation, a lot of people, you know, especially with domestic violence, for example, if you have people talking to you about it and they're trying to get you involved in the solution, well, he's saying I'm part of the problem. How can I solve a problem that I'm not involved in? So some people just hear that immediately and think, okay, so they're saying I'm part of the problem, and then switch out. They don't pay any attention because they're now getting accused of things. I don't think that's their intention, but there's definitely better ways of going about it. And it just has to be more clear what we can all do. Like 95% of men will never lay hands on a woman, I'm sure. Wouldn't even cross their mind. But for the 5% who would, means everyone has to get a talk. But there are still better ways for going about it and trying to make everyone unite as a team. Like with White Ribbon, for example, they're doing the Not Perfect Better. That is their new campaign, and it's led by men, and it's just people trying to recognize what we as individuals can do. And it's about stopping disrespect at the source. And it's kind of believing that violence against women sort of stems from disrespect against women. And that as that sort of continues on, people will, sort of treat them as lesser and then think it's okay to hit them or, cause violence or be rude. Obviously not the case, but it's about how we can create a community, especially in schools, where, many men are formed and where you're most impressionable, where even the thought of being disrespectful or, just sort of treating everyone as the same, and that it doesn't even come up at all in your mind, so that we just stop it right at the source.
Have you had the opportunity to call out disrespect before?
I've definitely had the opportunity. Probably, I can't remember exactly. I doubt I would have. Like, it's a pretty intimidating environment. If you're in school and someone says something you don't agree with, like, just realistically, you're not going to stand up and say something.
Within a group of boys?
No, yeah, you probably won't. It's one of the scariest things. But
what about now with people who are your friends?
No, I'm not friends with anyone who would do that though. Which is a pretty, you have to make that choice to separate yourself. But like, it's just about doing what you can. Like if I could go back, even if someone just makes a joke that makes you feel uncomfortable, just don't laugh. Like you don't have to say anything, but if you're in a group, say you're in a change room, 5 boys, just don't laugh. Go on your phone, pretend you're not listening. Do what you can. No one's saying that you should stand up and say, hey mate, this is wrong for these reasons. You'll look like a bit of an idiot and people won't like you and it will hurt you at school. You just will lose mates. It won't work. But
you don't have to get involved in it necessarily.
No, just don't encourage it. It's about doing as much as you feel comfortable doing. So in that instance, it might be not laughing. And it's about trying to give people those strategies as well because they're difficult. I couldn't tell you what to do them. Personally, I couldn't think of anything off the top of my head, but I'm sure I've heard things that I've just let slide because in the moment it's like just weighing it up. Like what's the pros and cons? It's definitely stacked against you to like stand up and say anything. But yeah, it's about doing what you can. And even if that's as simple as not laughing.
Have you seen any of those negative online attitudes translate to actual treatment of young women?
I don't really think so. I think it's a bit like maybe 10 years ago when people were against violent video games because it will cause violence. I don't see it. I don't know many people who watch that or have, like most people, pretty much everyone's heard of Andrew Tate and most people would have seen some of his stuff. I don't think it's caused anyone to do anything or treat people differently. I think it's just it's a little bit like that video games thing that I was saying. It's a bit of a scare because people, obviously, if you're a mum or if you're a dad, you're not in that area. You're not, you're more mature than the student or your son, so you don't know how he's going to take it. So it's like, oh, what if he does think this? Like, you have to trust your kids. Most people can figure out what's meaningless and what's sexist and what is a bad thing. Just trust them to be able to do that. But yeah, I don't see it translating into real life, to be honest.
Is there a frustration for young guys not getting a say about this stuff, like being talked about without actually being the ones asked about how they think and feel?
Yeah, you hear a lot about how young men feel, and yet you never hear a young man saying it on any major news station. And maybe there's issues legally with having a kid on, I don't know. But you would hope that that's something that could happen, that you could actually, like this conversation, have a conversation with a young man, with someone in school, and actually be able to feel how they feel. Because otherwise you have people who aren't really in your shoes, think they understand how you feel, and then are telling you about it. And it's like, this is all wrong. And it's a bit like with White Ribbon, when we're giving feedback on how sentences are formed, or just like small things like wording. It's like, we don't say any of those things. This doesn't hit at all. So it's like, you just get misrepresented so easily. And maybe no one wants to talk to us because they don't think we have anything to add, but we can help them a lot.
How do you feel about being a young man of 18 in this world today, with your life ahead of you, living in the society with everything that's going on?
I'm excited. I'm really grateful for my position. My parents gave me a lot of great opportunities in life, and I plan to make good use of all of them. I don't really want to think about obstacles or anything like that. I've just got my life. I want to try and live it, spend some time with some people I love. That's my goal. And
where do you draw confidence from? How have you become this confident young man who's here speaking very well today?
Oh, well, I was not always a very confident young man, but I think it's just about being self-reliant. If you're in a group of friends of people who you don't really like, or you don't think are good people, it's, you have the choice to leave, and it's a scary choice. Maybe it means you sit in the library by yourself for 6 months before you find some new friends, but, it's better than the alternative, which is that you become a bad person. Like, you're the sum of your 5 closest friends. I believe that dearly. And my dad gave me a quote, which I really love, which is that in terms of friendships, find people you enjoy spending time with, spend time with them. That's it, simple as. And that's what I've sort of done. When I was younger, in senior school, just kind of made conscious choices for who I wanted to hang around with, who I liked as people. Doesn't mean they're the coolest people. I like them. I want to hang out with them. Simple as, spend time with them. And to be honest, I don't really mind that much what other people think about it. I'm pretty happy with my choices. I don't think I've done anything wrong. So I'll take on feedback if anyone wants to give it to me. But just being self-reliant and self-confident, really.
What have you been insecure about in the past that you're not insecure about anymore?
I don't know if I was really insecure, to be honest. I don't feel insecure. It's like, it's very easy to, and some of my friends have issues with that kind of thing, but no one's perfect. Like, it's just kind of realizing everyone's human. I can point out flaws on absolutely anyone, but what's the point? I've got heaps of them. Doesn't mean I'm insecure about them. I am what I am. I'm happy with the person I am, and I like to think that I have a net positive effect on the world, which is a pretty big statement to say, but that's my goal.
Yeah, I get a feeling that you probably do, man.
Thanks.
Do you feel pressure to establish yourself as a man? Do you feel like you need to hurry up and grow up and make it all happen, or can you just let it come to you and not stress out too much?
This is probably an individual thing, because a lot of the people I know are very chilled about it, which I don't think there's anything wrong with. You certainly have a lot of time in life, but I like to have a plan. Just, that's something I like to have. Probably I've had one for maybe 5 years, and I have one for the next 20 years. So I think that just trying to keep your life on track, and have goals, set them, have big goals, and then have small actionable goals, things you do every day, every week, every month, things that you work towards. And I've helped friends with that as well, who sort of have had more dreams than goals. And I've just, said to them, hey mate, I think you're dreaming. This is not a goal. And then help them work through it, set, monthly, weekly goals. And actually, interestingly, during that process, kind of checked myself and being like, am I on track with my goals? I've kind of let a few things slip here. So just keeping yourself accountable, every day, kind of thinking things through. But I don't know if there's that much real pressure. I'm certainly in a privileged position. Like, I went to a great school. My family are amazing, and I'm really lucky in that regard. So, I probably could do not much and it would be all right. But I want to work hard, and I want to be successful and have a good impact on the world. So
Mate, I thought you were going to sell a program for a second there.
I've got this new course released.
Yeah. Do you think you can have that view and have those goals and be trying to stay accountable without feeling a sense of lack, like you're behind? Because I've certainly felt that in my own life and seen it around me a lot, where young guys in particular put a lot of pressure on themselves to get ahead or be further ahead than they are. Not just young guys, people in general, just having a general sense that they're behind, that they should be further along than they are. And the younger you are and the less you've done, potentially the more you feel that way. Although the older you get, you become more conscious of getting older as well. And there's that looming sense of pressure in the background, I think most of the time self-inflicted and down to comparison, looking to the person to your left and to your right and the 10 million people online who look like they've got a better life than you or they're further ahead than you. Do you wrestle with that at all, or are you just confident that if you just take it day by day and put an effort in, that it'll work out?
I'm a firm believer that, as Matthew McConaughey said, my hero is me in 10 years. And when I get there in 10 years, there'll be another hero 10 years down the track. That's the philosophy I kind of have. You know, like Jordan Peterson, one of the things that I've really taken away from him is that the scariest thing about setting goals is that you can fail. You have specific goals that if you don't meet, you've failed to meet that goal. Doesn't mean that you're a loser. Doesn't mean you should just give up and call it a day. But it just means, okay, I haven't hit that. Time to rethink it. Maybe I need to think smaller. Maybe I was too ambitious. But it's absolutely terrifying to set goals because you can fail. You give yourself a measurement of your own success or failure. But it's also motivating. And look, I've been kind of lucky with mental health. I've not struggled that much personally, but some of my mates certainly have. And one of the things that they've really spoken about is that one of the biggest reasons for it is they just aren't content with the person that they are. And they think that they could either be doing more or just as a human aren't happy with themselves.
And where do you think they're getting that sense from?
To be honest, I don't know. Like, I've spoken to them at length about this and I still don't really understand, because they're some of the most amazing people, and yet they don't feel that they've met the standards they should be setting for themselves. And I'll try and tell them, like, I think you're doing really well. No one's perfect. We all have our flaws. But so to me, it doesn't make sense. I think they should be really happy and content with themselves, and they're not. So maybe that's just how they're, predisposed as humans. But, like you asked about insecurities, I don't really have any. Doesn't mean I'm perfect. I'm nowhere near perfect. Countless flaws. But it just is what it is. It's not going to keep me up at night. I don't really care that much about other people's flaws, as long as they're good people. And so I'd sort of expect people to grant the same to me. And
you're not striving for this perfection,
no.
Like you should be, like you shouldn't have any flaws.
That's not my goal. It's just try and work towards a better sort of future for me, for the people around me, and, well, hopefully everyone. But that's a bit.
So you're someone that people come to, your mates come to and talk to about this stuff? Or is that happened in a group setting?
No, that's in an individual setting. But I mean, I would like to say so, but even with the people I'm talking about who really suffered, I didn't know until 2 years after, 6 months after, and it kind of amazed me, because I sort of figured I'd pick up on it, you hear about things with people suffering in silence, but you're always like, oh, that won't be me. I'd be smart enough to pick it. Not at all. I had zero idea. And then
in hindsight, were there signs there that you missed?
Not even. And I've asked them about it, and they said they were trying to hide it. And obviously I think they did a pretty good job. But it's just really sad, because I wish that I would have known and would have been able to help them. But I've spoken to them at length as well after, and I've asked, was there much I could have done? And they say not really. It's more of a personal struggle, and it's something that they have to get over. But it's also subjective. One of the people I asked, if I reached out to you and said, how you going, mate? Everything all good? Just wanted to check up. They told me they would have just said, yeah, everything's fine, no worries. But then another one was saying, yeah, I would have really liked that, and I probably would have opened up to you a little bit. So it's dependent on the person. And look, I kick myself for not messaging them and just asking, but
It's life experience too.
oh yeah, it's
And
something I'll do from now.
Hopefully it doesn't take losing a friend to start thinking this way and seeing things that way.
Yeah.
And certainly don't blame yourself for not picking up on something that people are actively trying to hide when you don't have any experience with that actually being a thing. I mean, mental health is something that these days, at least you hear about it, but hearing about it and then actually being confronted with it in your real life and seeing what that can look like and all the different ways in which it can present itself are different things.
Yeah.
And as you do have experience with it and you do know people who go through things and you ultimately go through things yourself, you learn and then you can pick up on signs and you grow the confidence to be able to have those conversations, ideally, that are really difficult for people to have. And one of the things that people struggle with most is how do you be there for someone if they come to you? Like, what do I do? Do I fix it? What do I say? And that stops a lot of people from telling others that they're there for them or trying to have that conversation because it freaks them out and they don't know what to do. And that persists well into adulthood. And sometimes people never get to a point where they can feel comfortable with that.
And like, as you said, it's a learning experience, and I'm lucky that it didn't take losing a mate, but it certainly came quite close, and I'm very grateful that that wasn't the case. But hopefully it's a learning experience that not everyone has to learn through that. I mean, we can look at the AFL with the recent death of obviously Adam Selwood, and we can say that as a country, maybe it's time to take things a little bit more seriously and have, like, for example, sports stars, people who most men, especially young boys, look up to, and have them affirm, like, please, if you're feeling anything, reach out. Some of my mates as well who'd struggled, they said, a few of the key reasons they never reached out was they didn't want to seem weak and they didn't want to be a burden. And, you're not a burden. Like, I just want to talk to you. It'd be so sad. It would affect me for the rest of my life if I'd lost them. The guilt, the everything. So that certainly would be more of a burden than an hour call. And like, obviously you're my mates, I love talking to you anyway. It's just an excuse to spend time with you, really. So
how do you approach it now? Do you check in? How do you temper just the usual having fun, talking about whatever, and then knowing when to ask, are you all right, or check, how do you work that in?
It's weird because, like, I'm not a massive fan of just sending a "how are you" message, because it's like saying whenever you meet someone, you're like, "Oh, how are you, mate?" You just say
people
good.
say good no matter what.
Yeah, like you're not actually asking. So like, if I'm hanging out with them, maybe I'll just ask questions that sort of either allude to it, or at the end of the night just say, "Hey mate, how's things going?" and actually check in, not just send a message. But it is difficult, and it's better to send a message than not send a message. But if you can have a serious conversation with people or check in, don't just, like, if you ask, "Oh, how are you?" "Yeah, mostly good. There's just been this one little thing." Like, explore that. Ask how your relationships are with your family, how you're feeling, how are you coping with the stress of school? Ask specific questions that it's hard to lie about. Because if someone's really struggling with year 12, maybe they feel happy saying good because they're trying to do you a favor and make them not a burden on you. But if you can try and really nail them down and say, "How are you going with year 12? "Oh yeah, but you didn't do too well on that test. "Oh, I thought that might have had a worse effect on you." And then make it hard for them to lie. Try and confront them and, obviously be friendly, but as a mate, just try and find out the truth and give them every opportunity to tell you. Make it as inviting as possible. And this is what I was saying with the sports stars. Again, people who people respect, to share this message. It's probably not enough having like a mental health round in the AFL, because realistically, what does that do? It's not going to make many people reach out. But if you have all the clubs, or if you have someone share, a personal insight, or, almost beg people, please reach out if you need anything, talk to a mate, or check up on your mates, and try not to just send a "hey, how are you" message. Realistically, you're just getting a good back. Try and be specific. Give them every opportunity to talk to you. That's been my takeaway from my sort of scares with those things.
And making it clear that you're there for the person without being overbearing, because people really don't want to feel like it's obvious that they've got a problem and they need fixing, because then our pride kicks in. And like you said about your mate who said, if you asked me, I would have said I'm fine. I wouldn't have told you because I felt like it was my cross to bear, like my burden to carry.
Yeah.
And that is how men in particular feel. And that's a very dangerous thing, because there's so much pride around, well, I'm supposed to be able to carry this and it's fully up to me and it's on my shoulders. And then you don't share it and it makes it so much heavier and then can end in tragedy.
It could also be because you've done something wrong. Maybe you did something stupid and it set you on a path and you don't want to admit it.
And you're punishing yourself.
But it's like, Jesus, I've done some stupid things. I'm sure you've done some stupid things. Like, it's just not, obviously it's something to feel a little bit embarrassed about, but certainly not worth losing your life over.
And certainly not as bad as you think it is in your head.
And certainly I wouldn't judge a friend who's told me of a stupid thing they've done. You know, like, there's some story in the Bible where it's like, whoever has done no sin can condemn this woman. And then everyone, because they all wanted her to be like strung up and killed. But then, you know, I'm not religious, but Jesus says,
glosses over the fact that everyone's a sinner, everyone's made mistakes before. Yeah.
How can you judge this woman for it? So I'm not going to judge my mate, and they can tell me pretty much anything. I still think they're good people. We all make mistakes, be it under the influence of alcohol, whatever. I'm not going to judge you that much. I'm still there for you as your mate. And maybe by the end of it, if it's super bad, I decide I can't be friends with you. But I certainly don't think that would be the case.
People around you really conscious of being judged?
Not really. I'm pretty open and honest with people. But I've had really good role models in that regard. Like, one of my friends who I've known for ages, he's just very himself, even at school. And like, he'd get judged as well and people would make fun of him. He didn't care. And I always loved talking to him, being an amazing, genuine guy. But he's kind of role modeled that for me, and just made me feel more comfortable in just being myself. And it's difficult in a school environment, more than outside of school, of course, because you have to spend 7 hours a week, or seven hours, 5 days a week, pretty much 40 weeks a year in a place. So you sort of have to mold yourself to fit in, or you'll just have a pretty brutal time of it.
Yeah.
But just kind of finding your community, because people will find a community, and hopefully it's a good one, not an online one where, you know, people were saying pretty mean things.
Where do people find role models, do you think?
Look, if you're lucky, you have a really close and great personal role model. You know, like, I love my dad. I strive to be as good of a man and person as he is, but not everyone's that lucky. And I have mentors and other family members who I look up to. But I mean, if you don't have any of them, teachers can potentially fill that role. There's probably 2 teachers in particular I look up to, and who had a significant impact on my life.
Community members, like coaches?
Yeah, like, I know there's a few boxing clubs in England, for example, which often fill that role, where men, especially in like kind of crime-ridden areas or single mother households, they go to these boxing gyms. I forgot the name. There's one in
definitely not just in England, man. I think that's most martial arts places are a lot like that.
The one I heard about in England, in Manchester, and it's like all the boys were saying the coaches kind of act as father figures, and they model good behavior, they model respect, and then they look up to them. So you can find them anywhere.
Yeah.
The worst case is when people turn to online, and then, as you say, they make them acolytes. They make them perfect people who really aren't perfect.
Yeah.
And then you take everything they say and you become a bad person.
I like what you say there, that the role models are to be found in your own community. They're people that you actually know in your own life who portray values that you want to adopt yourself. I think that's the way to go. That's a lot more realistic and a lot more meaningful than you hear about, the zeitgeist say, we need the antidote to Andrew Tate. Like, we need the archangel version of what a man should be. Like, that's going to be really helpful in some way if we have this massive online personality who represents different values.
Just need your dad.
Like, that's going to somehow save young men from the other side.
Yeah.
But I think it's actually finding people in real life who aren't famous or super well known or super wealthy or whatever it is, who just are good people and good men.
And it doesn't even have to be just men. Like my sister, my mum, I look up to both of them as well. You know, I probably have a different view on masculinity than most people, in that I just think there are good traits. I wouldn't say there are traits that are defined or should always be done by men. I think like you can be a selfless person, you can have empathy, you can be in tune with your emotions, and none of that makes you any less masculine. It's just about being a good person, trying to put other people first. And so I see no issue in looking up to women at all. My mum and my sister, for example, but other people as well, teachers.
So how would you define the kind of man that you want to be?
Hopefully I've been a good son and a good brother, but I want to be a good husband and a good father.
So defining it through your relationships.
Yeah, which depends on the person. Obviously, depends on who you marry, who you're with, what, maybe like obviously opposites kind of attract. So it just depends on who you get with, I guess, and like what situation you end up having. Maybe you need to be an emotional pillar for someone.
But for you, you see that role as being connected to those fundamental relationships in your life. Like that's what you'll define yourself around. Like that's what's going to matter, you think?
That's my goal. Yeah. I'm a very family oriented person. I've always wanted, to be a father one day. And I guess life is just sort of training you so you can actually do that one day.
What do you think about the importance of service?
I think you almost get more out of it than the people that you actually help, because it really does teach you a great number of things. Like I have a dog. I take him for lots of walks, and it was a walk 2 or 3 years ago. I walked past the Norwood Oval. There was a guy outside, a homeless guy sleeping under the ticket booth. And like that's normally where I'd end my walk and then turn back, but there's a on the run across the road. So I went across there, grabbed some sandwiches, a yogurt and some water, and then went to give it to the guy. And I just ended up having a nice chat with him. It was about 5 minutes. Had the dog as well, but it was so shocking. It was a normal conversation. Like we were just talking about the weather, how it's been, a little bit of the footy. Like it's not at all what you would expect. It's so easy to, especially with homeless people, view them as not lesser. Like I don't think anyone does that. Well, hopefully not, but just something kind of
assume they're a threat in some way.
But you could just be unfortunate in life or not have a support system that could back you up, and maybe you get fired or you get, let off. There's nothing you can do about that. And then just to have a normal conversation. Like I remember walking back and that was all I was thinking about. And I was like, Jesus.
Yeah, we're only a few terrible things going wrong away from that happening.
And it's not even in your control. It could be all unlucky, and then that could be me. Well, probably not, because I'm lucky enough to have a support system. But if you don't and you're unlucky, Jesus, you're pretty close to there. So that was really humbling, and that's changed my outlook a lot on life. And I just have way more empathy and compassion for people. And we're all human. We're all working hopefully towards the same goal. And just trying to view it like that. Most people were trying to be good.
I love that. What do you reckon no one asks teenage boys that they probably should?
It's very easy to get sort of stonewalled and just sent in a direction of what it's like to be a good man. It's very difficult to break free and have your own thoughts and your own beliefs, because like firstly you'll probably be judged, a little bit of an outsider, and especially in a school environment, like the safest thing to do is just conform. But it's actually really courageous to be yourself and try and work out your own path in life and your own values and what you think you stand for. I think we should encourage people to do more of that. Like say a masculine trait, right? Say men are more likely to do it than women. It's only by a tiny amount. Realistically, it's not going to represent 40% of men, and also 40% of women are also likely to do that, so they're misrepresented as well. Like if you don't fit in that trait, there's nothing wrong with that. You're slightly in the minority of people. Doesn't mean that you're not a man. It means
it does take courage. It does take courage to be yourself, though, if who you are doesn't fit the mold that you see of what is accepted or easily accepted.
Oh, it's insanely courageous. And as I was saying with my friend who kind of was just unapologetically himself, Jesus, that was inspiring. Something I'm not courageous enough to do for sure, or wasn't in school probably wouldn't even be now. But we should encourage it.
You're not being yourself right now?
Oh, I'm pretty myself, but it's in a different environment. Like you don't have to, at school you have to see 160 people in your year 5 times a week, 7 hours. Like it would kind of suck to be alone for all of that. So if there's no one who you vibe with or no one that you want to be mates with, you'll have a better time if you change yourself slightly and get some friends. Whereas outside of school, obviously you have a much larger pool of people who you mesh with and you have a great time with. I was lucky enough to find a handful of mates who I really get along with and like as humans and would love to spend more time with. And, that's difficult in a school environment. Obviously there's sort of set groups and it's difficult to have everyone like align. So you have to sort of pick and choose. And a lot of people will change themselves in order to fit in a group. That's just the way it is, because it's better to have some friends than no friends in school, which means you can't always be yourself, which is partly why I so admire the courage of my mate who was just himself. But, he has a number of great friends that are good for him. I'm one of them and he's inspired me. So I think we should encourage people to.
If you don't find your people at school, you will find your people outside of after school somewhere, because it's a big world out there. And the only way that you'll do that is by being yourself. But also you kind of work out who yourself is when you're so young and you're only just getting through puberty and you've got everything ahead of you. It actually takes a bit of time and effort and experience to work out who you are.
Like if you don't like someone, why don't you like them? You should actually just reflect on why you don't like them, because it's probably reflective of something you don't like in yourself. It's some negative thing or thing that you're trying to suppress that you just don't want. And so do you sort of do a lot of reflecting? Like I don't really journal that much, to be honest. I tried it. I just got a bit bored of it. I probably should. It's probably a good thing to do. But like I went bouldering in year 12.
Tough.
Oh, it is. But I did it for about an hour a day. And I'd walk there at like 8:50 and then I'd spend about an hour there, walk home, 10-minute walk. Great, convenient location. It was amazing. But it was, 10 minutes there, 10 minutes back where I can just reflect. And I would always think through my day and I'd make a conscious choice of thinking about the things I like, the things I want to do better.
Not scroll on your phone.
No, not even music in.
That's impressive.
Yeah, but it was a conscious thing. Like I didn't want to just listen to some music and zone out. Like I wanted to reflect on my day. And, while I'm bouldering, I can listen to music, whatever. I'm not thinking I'm tired. I'm exerting myself. But I just think, who did I like talking to today? Who didn't I like talking to today? Did they make me feel like I had to change myself to be around them? And so I certainly did a lot of soul searching, a lot of reflecting, and I think that I'm pretty happy with that. I've worked out more or less who I want to be as a human and who I want to be around, more importantly.
Good to carry that forward and keep that kind of perspective with you.
Have time for reflection.
It's a good way to review things.
Yeah.
Behaviors within yourself and the emotions that's leading to, and then also people around you, how they're affecting you. And then when you get into working, what impact is that having, and the pros and the cons, and your own agency to be able to change things and actually look at that. And I think that's why we're on our phones so much. Anytime we get a second to ourselves or we have to look at a screen, it's because we don't.
So easy. It's so
we don't want to think about those things because they can make us feel uncomfortable or make us feel like we need to change something.
But it's like setting specific goals. You also give yourself a way to measure your failure. And so if you want to actively reflect upon your day, maybe you had a really bad day and you don't want to think about that because you just want it done and you just want to go on your phone and scroll TikTok. That's exactly the day where you should be thinking. And you should be thinking every day, write down, even if it's the worst day of your life, what are 3 things that you enjoyed or made it slightly more bearable? And then try and do more of that. It's simple. It's like my dad said with friends. Find people you like spending time with, spend times with them. Find things you enjoy, do more of it. Or if you don't like it, you don't like someone, spend less time with them. It's really simple. And I didn't think I'd have to be told it, but I did, and it worked quite well.
A wise man.
My dad, yeah.
Listen to your dad. He'll be chuffed to hear this, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Well, Jesse, it's been really terrific getting to talk to you. Youngest ever guest on the podcast. And I've been thoroughly impressed with your insight and your self-awareness and your ability to be articulate. It's been a really interesting conversation and so good to talk to someone who actually is a teenage young man still, and actually hear it from the horse's mouth rather than just talk about it conceptually with people who are older than that, and hear some views that perhaps we don't hear much of. Less need for everyone to be freaking out, and certainly some pretty encouraging things that you're saying about yourself and people, and we get that, you're not every young man in the world, but you are one of them. And I think it's a really valuable insight for people to be able to hear. So thanks for taking the time to do that.
Thank you. It was great to be on here. Great to have a chat. Lots of your questions really made me think as well. So I'm sure I'll do some reflecting on today, but cheers for the opportunity.
Thanks, mate. That's it for this episode. If you like what we're all about, support us by following Young Blood Men's Mental Health on Instagram and Young Blood Mental Health on TikTok. Every podcast episode is recorded in professional quality video, and they're all up on our Young Blood Men's Mental Health YouTube channel. So please show some love and subscribe. You can find everything there is to know about the podcast at youngbloodmensmentalhealth.com. And most importantly, please share these stories with anyone in your life who needs to know they're not alone. We're all in this together. Catch you next time.